Hello, hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. If you've not subscribed to our channel yet, please take a moment to do that now before we get started. Alright, so here on Let's Talk Ray Bradbury, we've been slowly, methodically working our way through the collection, These Stories of Ray Bradbury. Today we are up to story number 85 of 100, which is A Story of Love, written in 1951. The way I like to run these review videos is I do a quick synopsis of the plot of the story and then wrap up with my sort of thoughts and feelings about what it all means and where it really stands in the Bradbury pantheon. Alright, so synopsis. One day a cute 24-year-old teacher arrives at Greentown Central School for her first day of class. A new teacher, new arrival. Immediately, a 14-year-old loner boy named Bob Spaulding drops the spitball that he had all lined up for her and instead volunteers to stay late after school and clean the chalkboards. The next day, Bob surprises her by meeting her out front of her boarding house and even carries her books all the way to the edge of the school property where he gives them back to her because he doesn't want all the other kids to see, thinking that they won't understand whatever the situation is. This goes on for a while, but eventually Ann Taylor tries to avoid him. She will go in early to class or ask somebody else to stay behind after school to clean the chalkboards. But, you know, it's very hard to dissuade this boy from his puppy love. On one occasion, she does agree to join him on a picnic, and the boy, who we learn is very well read in Dickens and a lot of classics. He also has a collection of butterflies. He likes to capture them and kill them and preserve them and also catch crayfish in the creek and a lot of slightly childish things, but also slightly, in some ways, advanced. Finally, though, she tries to explain to him that, you know, this isn't... There's nothing wrong with what we're doing because we're not doing anything and we're just friends, and I can see that you're a very thoughtful, mature, kind child. But I am your teacher, and the rest of the world sort of judges us by our age and our height, and you're 15 inches too short and several years too young. Bob then reveals that, you know, it's okay. You don't have to avoid me anymore. My family is moving away. It's not because of you, you know, it's because my father got a new job 50 miles away. So that's the last time that they see each other, but he does suggest that she... if she can possibly do it, wait for him, and then they will be of proper age, although both people would continually age anyway. 15 years later, although he's only been living 50 miles away, Bob returns to town. His wife drops him off and goes off on some errands, and he walks around and he inquires about Ann Taylor, and he learns that she died about 2 years after he left town. And he goes to her gravestone and learns that he's in fact now 3 years older than she is. So, on one level, maybe a case of puppy love, but I think it's more than that. In our time, we expect to think of this situation as being creepy. Hot young teacher taking advantage of innocent young boy child, which is not entirely the case here. Bradbury, like so often, it's his delicate touch that really sells this thing. And also the fact that Ann Taylor is herself trying to avoid the situation. So it's not like she's preying on him in any sense of the word. Bradbury was writing this in 1951, and we're told in the story that Ann Taylor died in 1936, so he's writing from a even far older time. And this really reminds me of the relationship of my grandparents. My grandfather was born in 1906, and he married my grandmother, who was 15 years younger than him. And, you know, that gap seems huge, but I think it was less of a gap prior to our sort of modern time. Things have been changing. But also, I think it speaks to the difference in how we perceive age. When you're young, the age gap seems insurmountable, but when you're both adults and older, that gap shrinks, and you can really form your relationship based on who you actually are. My sister too is married to a man who is 15 years older than she is. However, you don't see the difference because once we're actually fully developed adults, we age a lot slower, it seems like, and then you can really sort of form your relationships based on your actual compatibility and not have to worry about age as much. Although, if the age gap is too large, sometimes the tabloids like to pick up on it among our celebrities, but really it's not the issue that we sometimes make it out to be. I do also like the idea here that at the beginning of the story, Bob appears to be the bad boy loner, and who acts out. But in fact, we find out that he acts out because he's basically bored in class and incompatible with sort of the age group that he's been placed in. I can sort of relate to that. I was a voracious reader once I learned to read, and I had a history of acting out as well, and for various reasons that I probably didn't understand at the time. But I can, in a sense, relate to that a little bit, where I think in society in general, I think there's a lot of kids who get branded as bad kids, who in fact it's not always the case. And in some areas, some school districts, some situations, if they do have particular early developing talents, they might be plucked from that group and put in somewhere more appropriate so they can sort of learn at their own pace. But that doesn't necessarily happen everywhere, especially in these rural situations where there aren't other schools to send kids to and other classes. And it really, in a very chance way, I think this whole situation in this story does speak a little bit to the troubles with our education system today. I mean, this was probably a one-room schoolhouse, like ones my grandparents went to school in. However, now, for a long time, schools have been sort of on the factory system, the assembly line system, just like schools, prisons, factories. They're all sort of run on the same sort of Henry Ford assembly line premise, and it doesn't work for everybody, and people get left behind for various reasons, and it's not always the reasons you think. It's not necessarily being too slow. It could also be being too exceptional. So on either end of the spectrum, it can be a bad situation, and it could hurt people, young kids, before they even have a chance. Where basically, I'm not going to say mediocrity is the most cherished thing, or rewarded thing. I think it's just that if you fit in, it works, and it works for perhaps for the most amount of people. But what about those who are left on either fringe, either below or above the status quo? So a lot to think about in this little story from 1951. That was A Story of Love. Tune in tomorrow, and we will take a look at The Parrot Who Met Papa from 1972. Thank you, and I'll see you again soon.